666.
Here we go.
Authorized use of deadly force by peace officers.
Let's do it.
Oh, there's a statute directly on point in Minnesota that talks about when peace officers may use lethal force.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's a channel where we find the truth, seek understanding, and be the light. It's your boy, Big Blue. And look, guys, I've already done the first video in the first recording that we have in regards to the shooting of Renee in Minnesota. And then we did the second video in regards to the shooting from the perspective of the ICE officer, because he had his phone on and it was recording. And we have footage of that. And it seemed a little more clear as to what is going on, but not 100%. But anyways, this is going to be the last time I cover this video, because we kind of got what it is that we got. The situation happened, it's over with, and now we're here now. But what's important is information, because you could choose your stance and you can see your stance. But the question is, how much information are you going off of? When we first watched the video, I was kind of on the fence. We watched the second video, it made things a little more clear. But it's always good to know exactly what's going on. So a buddy of mine, he went ahead and he sent me this video. He didn't send me, he sent it to our group. And everything that was said in this video is very interesting information. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Are facing a 1,200% increase in assaults.
Damn, that's tough. Makes sense why they want to stay anonymous. His name is Jonathan E. Ross. When he fled the scene of the shooting, Ross got into a 2021 gold Chevy Tahoe. The plate number, EVC289, is registered as a personal vehicle, which is strange because ICE spokesperson Mike Alvarez unequivocally stated that ICE do not use personal vehicles while conducting enforcement operations. And yet we saw Ross casually saunter back to one after alleged injuries so grievous that Trump claimed it's hard to believe he's alive. Which is interesting because under DHS policy, officers may only use deadly force if an unarmed person poses an immediate and unavoidable threat to life. Moving car is not enough, as evidenced by Orrin v. City of Tacoma, where it was ruled that officers cannot claim qualified immunity when a reasonable alternative, like stepping aside, would have prevented harm. And yet, J.D. Vance has brazenly stated that Ross has absolute immunity and attempted to justify it by invoking a previous incident where Ross had been dragged by a car, but Vance failed to delineate the difference between the previous driver, a violent criminal with multiple driving offenses, and Renee Good, a mother and a prize-winning poet who, at the time of the shooting, had stuffed animals in her glove compartment. If previous trauma had lowered Ross's threshold for lethal force to such a minuscule level, why was he still deployed in high-risk street operations? A question that might introduce federal responsibility. And Minneapolis has a little bit of a history of introducing federal credibility failures. So naturally, the FBI takes over the case and cuts Minnesota's access to evidence, which is fucking insane. Because in Ross's aforementioned case with the dragging incident, the Bloomington Police Department were proudly listed as collaborators with the FBI. They were happy to partner with local police when it helped secure a conviction and make Ross look like a hero. Now the FBI is conveniently excluding local authorities when the same guy extrajudiciously murders an innocent woman. We have investigated ourselves and found no evidence of wrongdoing. That's one way.
Okay, so interesting information as he was stating. And now again, this just happened. I don't know what he does for a living, but for him to come out, get all that evidence and all that stuff, or all that information within this short amount of time in which all this panned out, it's pretty interesting. I give him his props, because that's the editing, the data that he got. I mean, maybe it didn't take him that long, but coming from my perspective, this took a lot of time to do. For the ICE officer to come in a personal vehicle, and if it was said that, ICE officers don't use personal vehicles, interestingly enough, okay, I'll give him that. So that just comes from the perspective of the ICE officer himself. As we can see, again, good information, but not to unjustify anything that was said. What I want to do now is actually look at this from a law perspective, because at the end of the day, regardless of the ICE agent, regardless of who Renee was, as a mother, as a wife or spouse, whatever we want to call it, we have to now look at the law. Everything that homeboy just said was all good and dandy, but now it's a matter of the law and how we even got here. So let's go ahead and take a look. So this video is actually going to be from Washington gun law. Looks like a lawyer from Washington that understands gun laws. Now, he's not in Minnesota, but lawyers know how to look up their information, and that's what we're here for, to gain more information on the situation. So let's go ahead and take a look and see exactly what new information that we can gather in regards to this. Let's take it.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. We are going to have to talk about the terrible events that took place a couple days ago in Minnesota involving an ICE officer, because it appears that everybody on the Exosphere and other social media platforms are suddenly just like my father-in-law and brother-in-law. What do I mean by that? Well, they are all self-defense legal experts now. Because
just like I was the last video.
Because in my family, they used to be infectious disease experts, and then they became election integrity experts, and then they became immigration enforcement experts, and lately they've been experts in fraud investigation, and now they want to tell me how the laws of self-defense work without, of course, actually reading the law. And so what I figured we'd do today is something that no one else is really willing to do, which is take a look at what happened, but then compare that to the actual law. So that's what we're going to do today.
We're here to learn, y'all.
Let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about what does the law say about the ICE shooting in Minnesota. Okay, America. Now, listen, if you're tuning into this video to hear me say this is absolutely positively a cold-blooded murder, or this is absolutely positively legally justified, I'm not going there, because as a trial attorney, we don't try to come to conclusions until we have all the evidence. And you nor I have all the evidence right now. We are going to take a look at 2 video clips to at least give us a thumbnail sketch of what may happen. But we are not truly going to get to a conclusion today, but we are going to ask all of you, based upon what you know so far, what do you think? Now, we all know the incident I'm talking about, where a woman was shot and killed by an ICE agent in Minnesota. I am not going to try to glorify this thing, and I'm not going to sit here and try to coffin surf on her. And for those of you who may think that she had it coming, that she did this to herself, that this was an FAFO moment, you may be entirely right. But let us not divorce ourselves from the fact that this is a human life, a terrible waste of a human life, and a mother of a young child. And so this is tragic no matter how we cut it up. I know there's a lot to the backstory and what happened leading up to this incident, but I'm here to tell you that most of that, if not all of it, is not going to matter. Let's go back to the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Yeah, the prosecution made a big deal out of all the events that led up to the incident, but really that 15 seconds that actually constituted the incident, that's what the entire trial was about.
Yep, I remember that.
And so what led up to this will have little, if any, importance. As a matter of fact, the assessment of whether or not this was a lawful use of force is going to be based on really just a few seconds of time. And with that in mind, let's take a look at the first video clip that most of you have probably already seen. Now, I'm going to warn you that we'll probably stop it a little early, simply because Google and YouTube have a tendency to completely crap themselves about here, but we will link up the videos below so that you can actually see them in their entirety. This is the first video, the one you've all seen.
Okay.
No! No! Shame! Shame! Oh my
Okay.
God!
We've seen that.
What the What the You just what the did you do?
Okay, and we're going to break that down in just a moment here, but I think another video, which many of you may not have seen because it hasn't been circulated as much, but it's a different angle, and I want you to pay careful attention to this, and I want you to take a look at the officer who discharged his firearm, was actually in danger, and was, in this case, struck by the perpetrator's vehicle. Take a look at this video.
That's not the one that we saw yesterday. Okay, more information. Guys, I hope that y'all are able to see this very clearly. I didn't even know that this one existed. Why haven't we seen this one? Guys, literally, he's been hit. He's been moved. A lot of people thought that he just, moved out the way and then like hit the car trying to adjust. But that shows him being struck, guys. Gonna be pretty hard to try and deny the fact that he was struck here.
Okay, so when we go and we do a video breakdown of this right here, it's all going to be focused on, was this officer, the one you can barely see here, or in this case, this officer right here, same guy, was he actually placed in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury? In general, there are 4 legal justifications for using lethal force. These are them right here. We're going to ignore 3 of them because we're going to just talk about this first one right here, which is that you yourself are in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. If this officer was in fact in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury, he probably has legal justification for using lethal force. Now, I think we can all agree, we can probably all agree that getting run over by a car is certainly imminent threat of death or serious bodily.
Which is interesting because the other video that we just watched, homie mentioned that the officer could have easily just stepped away. If we recall from the video, from the officer's perspective, he was already walking past. He was already walking across from the vehicle. Once the vehicle had pulled back, he was halfway through. From point blank, do you really think that somebody's going to be crazy enough to try and run you over? Who knows? And because of the way that she pulled back, she could have went in any direction. We don't know. Like you're that close. It's not. You're not far. Let's keep going. I'm gonna stop talking.
Injury. So if that was a possibility, if that actually was the reality of what could occurred, then there is a strong likelihood that the officer's actions here were lawfully justified. But for all of the people, the Jacob Frays of the world and everything like that, that are just coming to their own legal conclusion, might I remind them to check out what Minnesota law says.
Oh, snap.
For example,
what does this say?
Minnesota Statute 609.066.
All right, here we go.
Authorized use of deadly force by peace officers.
Let's do it.
Oh, there's a statute directly on point in Minnesota that talks about when peace officers may use lethal force? Yeah, there is. And here's what the statute says. A, notwithstanding the provisions of section 609.06 or 609.065, the use of deadly force by a peace officer in the line of duty is justified only if an objectively reasonable officer would believe, based on the totality of circumstances known to the officer at the time and without the benefit of hindsight, that such force is necessary and necessary to do one of the following. 1, to protect the peace officer or another from death or great bodily harm, provided that the threat, 1, can be articulated with specificity, 2, is reasonably likely to occur absent action by the law enforcement officer, and 3, must be addressed through the use of deadly force without unreasonable delay. Which is a fancy legal way of saying you need to be able to articulate a very good reason and prove to us that you really did not have any other options.
Yeah.
Now, the imminency, that is, how quickly could this happen, is always a critical component. So had the officer who discharged the firearm maybe been 30 yards down the road and had plenty of time to get out of the way, this would be an entirely different equation.
And he would have.
Let us remember that.
Then it could have been a matter of, step to the side or find cover type thing if they're coming in your direction. I mean, even then, that's still weird to me. But
that the officer is directly in front of the vehicle at the time that she decides to punch it. But then there's additional statutes that would apply to anybody in this situation, whether they're a peace officer or not. Take, for example, Minnesota Statute 609.065, Justifiable taking of life. That statute specifically states, the intentional taking of the life of another is not authorized by section 609.06, except when necessary in resisting or preventing an offense which the actor reasonably believes exposes the actor or another to great bodily harm or death, or preventing the commission of a felony in the actor's place of abode. So if the ICE officer here reasonably believes that they had been exposed to a high probability of serious injury or death, not only themselves or any other fellow officers, they are justified in using lethal force.
Interesting.
And then, and of course, Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Fray should know this because it is Minnesota law, and it took us all about 10 seconds to look it up. Believe it or not, there is specific law that talks about the authorized use of force against police officers. So let's say that...
Yeah, this ain't nothing gonna happen to this officer. So not to say that everything that was done was the right call. That's not what I'm saying. But at this current point in time, considering the law, considering the courts, considering the laws, especially in Minnesota, it's looking like this ain't going anywhere. If they ever decide to like try to post charges, which I doubt, which would be a waste of money, honestly.
For whatever reason, the now deceased believed that she had absolutely every right in the world to block traffic, to go out and protest, to obstruct, hinder, delay, whatever she was doing with the ICE operations. Understand that this Minnesota law specifically states, deadly force used against peace officers. Deadly force may not be used against peace officers who have announced their presence and are performing official duties at a location where a person is committing a crime or an act that would be a crime if committed by an adult. Well, it is very clear that they did announce who they were. They did announce their presence. And what was their whole purpose of being there was to round up people for what? That's right, illegal activity. Okay, and then there's one other little legal issue that we need to discuss. And I do believe that some who believe this was cold-blooded murder are going to start beating on this drum anytime now. And I think it would be relevant if the officer was, in fact, more like 20 or 30 yards down the road and had a serious opportunity to get out of the way of the moving vehicle. Because in Minnesota, believe it or not, they have a duty to retreat. Just another strike against Minnesota, why it is really one of the most terrible states in America right now. But under Minnesota law,
just like,
if you are in a public...
I'm pretty sure that's just like in like New York and some of the blue states up north that I hear when it comes to having a firearm or anything like that. If you have the option to retreat, you must retreat. If somebody comes into your house, there is no stand your ground. You are to run. Do not engage with said person. Some people say it's a bad thing. Some people say it's a good thing. It just depends on the situation, honestly. Clearly, a lot of people are going to feel like if you're coming into my house, I should be able to defend my house. It's crazy that you're not allowing me to defend my house. But that's these laws, guys.
Place and can safely avoid a confrontation or escape from danger, the law requires you to do so before resorting to force. All right, and again, if we take this officer right here, put him all the way down the street here, then I think we could at least analyze this under a duty to retreat. But when you are a mere few feet from the front of a vehicle, which is clearly hell-bent on accelerating in your direction, you don't really have that opportunity to retreat. But now let's take more of a 35,000-foot view and ask ourselves this. How did we get here? How did we get here?
Yeah, another big question. How did we get here? Please do explain it. I'm almost positive he's going to say the same thing that I said in the other video.
Well, I suppose when you have literally every single politician from one of the two major political parties, including the most vocal of those coming from the state of Minnesota, basically calling ICE officers the Gestapo, the Nazis, things such as that, where they are essentially advocating for violence against law enforcement officers. And I want you to understand that even though you may not be thrilled with what ICE is doing, understand that ICE constitutes law enforcement and they're just out there doing their job. And there is a time and an opportunity to fight the legality of what law enforcement has done. I've made a living out of doing that. It does not occur on the street, however. It occurs in the courtroom. And it is this villainization. It is this violent, vile rhetoric that has come from one side of the political aisle that has created this very incendiary situation, one of extreme volatility. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that this will be the last incident that we have to break down where someone gets violent with an ICE officer requiring them to defend themselves. Okay, so once again, I ask all of you, what do you think?
Okay, guys, this is exactly... Well, it's good that I'm able to at least gather up some information in regards to the information, in regards to the video and the research that we've done with these body cam videos. We've seen to have learned a lot to be able to kind of get an idea of the outcomes of the law. Now, granted, the only big difference is the law could have said something completely different, but the law stands. And like I said, if this was to get to the courts, I don't see this going very far. I don't. That's just the truth of the matter. Everything that happened with the first video as far as the information in regards to the ICE officer Ross, yeah, that part may be true. But that's not going to come into the courts because that has nothing to do with the courts and what happened here. Now, I will still stand by and give her the benefit of the doubt that while she was trying to turn, she may not be the best driver. And while she was trying to turn, she clearly didn't turn the wheel enough for her to easily get past the officer. Because based off of how the wheels was looking, there was a little more turning that could have been done. But that didn't happen. So I'm going to just go off that idea that she couldn't turn off and that's what happened. I don't want to think that somebody would be crazy enough to try and hit an officer. That's all I got to say. That, like, really, guys, come on. Let's just be real enough to really think about hitting an officer. It doesn't matter if he's not a police officer. He's still a federal agent. And you can't, that's not an ideal thing to do. And it clearly state that in Minnesota law. That's the crazy thing that it's written in the law, guys. It's there. So there is no finding in court saying that you just doing this, just doing that, because you were just hoping to escape. You're not invincible, guys. Y'all are not invincible. We are not invincible. We have to be cautious and use the sermon and really use our heads when it comes to these type of situations. But I rest my case, guys. Y'all let me know in the comment section what y'all think. I'm going to catch you on the next one. Take it easy. Peace.